My name is Nora, and this is my story. I live in a small blue house on a quiet street in Portland, Oregon, with a crooked fence and a porch that sighs when I step on it. For 3 years, I saved every dollar I could find. I brought home singles and fives from late shifts, tucked tens in envelopes, and rolled quarters at the kitchen table. By last spring, I had $48,000 counted twice and written down in neat lines. On the day I signed the lease for my restaurant, I pressed my palm to the window and whispered, "I can do this." I called the place North Star Kitchen because I wanted something steady to steer by. The space is narrow, with brick on one side and a long mirror on the other. In the back, a simple line of burners waits like patient horses. The landlord, Mr. Harris, handed me the keys and said, "You'll make it shine." I said thank you and didn't tell him how my hands shook. I drove straight to the hardware store and bought paint, brushes, and a stepladder for $89. I chose a soft cream for the walls and a dark green for the chairs. At night, I returned to my blue house and told the rooms what I had done. I talked to the refrigerator, the sink, even the old clock that loses a minute every day. "I'm really going to open," I said, and the clock ticked as if it believed me. On the mantel sits a lucky 20-pound note that my friend Naomi brought back from Europe. For courage, she told me when she gave it to me in Boston last year. I framed it with 2 small nails and a cheap frame, and it catches the light each morning like a little promise. I told my family everything. My mother, Diane, said she would wear her blue dress. My father, Robert, said he would bring a toast. My brother, Lucas, promised to hang lights. My sister, Maria, texted me a list of songs she wanted to hear. My Aunt Evelyn said she would fly in from Chicago if the fares were not too high. Even my cousin Grace, who lives in New York City and always talks fast, said she would try to make it. My best friend, Lila, sent me $200 with a note. "For lemons and sugar. Your pie can save the world." I believed her. The weeks before the opening were a long, bright blur. I ironed napkins on my kitchen table and stacked them by the window. I bought plates, 12 at a time, so the bill would not scare me. I found chairs at a yard sale for $6 each, then spent 2 nights sanding them smooth. A neighbor named Carol came by with her husband, Mark, and offered me a used mixer that still worked. "Take it," Carol said. "America loves a second act." I smiled and carried it inside, heavy and hopeful. When I tested it, the beaters made a quick silver blur, and my heart did too. The menu grew out of what I know: roast chicken with herbs, skillet cornbread with honey butter, a green salad with toasted almonds, and lemon pie with a flaky crust. I practiced the pie until the crust felt like a small miracle under my fingers. I kept costs in a notebook: $1.29 for lemons, $3.49 for butter, $2.19 for flour, because numbers calm me. When I felt afraid, I stood in the dining room and pictured my family at a long table, passing plates, laughing. I pictured strangers leaning close, saying, "This tastes like home." I thought of the word Europe on the frame by my window and the word America in my mouth, and I felt held between both, luck and labor, promise and proof. On the morning of the grand opening, the sky over Portland was pale and clear. I locked the door of my blue house, slid the keys into my pocket, and breathed in the cool air. The sign in the restaurant window read, "Grand Opening, Tonight." I traced each letter with my finger as if I could keep it from trembling. Inside, the tables waited like blank pages. I set one place and sat for a moment just to feel the room hold me. Then I stood, tied on my white jacket, and began. By late afternoon, the sky over Portland turned the color of a clean plate. I left my small blue house with my jacket over my arm and the keys cold in my pocket. Before I shut the door, I touched the frame that holds Naomi's lucky 20-pound note and said, "Watch over me." The porch sighed, the way it always does, and I walked to my car. On the drive, I said the menu out loud like a song: roast chicken, green salad, cornbread, lemon pie, so my hands would be steady when the first guest stepped in. At 4, I unlocked the restaurant and flipped the switch. The room came alive in warm light, and the mirror along the wall caught my face and threw it back to me, a woman with hope and a list. I set water glasses and straightened the forks. I slid folded napkins into place, as if they were letters to people I loved. I taped a small paper by the register that said, "Opening night goal, $1,200, and under it I wrote, "Tips to share, $200. It felt brave to put numbers in ink. On the bar, I placed a small jar labeled Pie Fund because I wanted a sweet target to reach. I tied my apron and whispered, "Open." At 5, the first guests came in, a couple from Seattle named Carol and Mark. Carol had kind eyes and said, "We saw your sign." Mark told me they like roast chicken, so I started the pan and spooned butter over the skin. The air turned golden with the smell. A student named Daniel sat at the counter and ordered soup. He said he was new to the city, and I said, "Me too," in this way. A nurse named Zoe arrived with 2 friends and asked for lemon pie first, for luck. I cut 3 slices and the knife made a clean hush through the crust, the sound I love most in the world. I heard laughter, then the slow clink of glasses. The room felt like a hand holding mine. Every time the door opened, I looked up for my family. I pictured my mother, Diane, in her blue dress, my father, Robert, with a toast ready, my brother, Lucas, carrying a coil of lights, my sister, Maria, with a playlist on her phone. 6 o'clock came and went. I checked my phone, nothing. I told myself they were finding parking. 7 o'clock brought a small party from a studio down the street. A woman named Alice slipped $40 under her plate and said, "For the Pie Fund." I put the bills in the jar and added a tiny heart on the goal sheet. Still, no message from Grace in New York City, no call from Aunt Evelyn in Chicago. The mirror kept reflecting the door, and I kept turning. By 8, I was working the line and the floor, and yet a quiet chill moved through me. I plated chicken, I tossed the green salad, I warmed the cornbread and brushed it with honey butter. A man named Henry ate at a corner table and told me about his first job in America, washing dishes for $2 an hour many years ago. He left $50 with a note that said, "Keep building." A teacher named Laura came with her friend Nina and said, "We like how it smells in here." I smiled and thanked them and tried not to look at the empty table I had set for my family. 12 chairs, polished and waiting. At 9, I took a breath and counted the till between orders. $786 so far, plus the $40 from Alice and the $50 from Henry, plus singles and 5s in the jar. Good, I told myself. Honest money. The kind you feel in your bones. I poured water for a couple celebrating a small promotion. The woman, Eliza, said she wanted to spend her raise on lemon pie, which felt like a blessing. But when the door swung again, and it was only the wind, a hard truth pressed on me. I sent a text, "Where are you?" and set the phone face down. By 10, the room thinned. "I boxed a slice of pie for Daniel for tomorrow," he said, and I gave him a discount because he looked like someone who needed a win. The last check closed with 2 $20 bills and a warm thank you. I turned off the sign in the window. The letters went dark one by one. In the quiet kitchen, steam drifted from a stack of pans. I washed them slowly, so I could think. I had opened my dream, and strangers had come. They paid in dollars and kindness. The empty chairs still glowed in my mind like a row of small moons. I hung my jacket, locked the door, and stood under the night sky. A woman in America with a key, a bell jar, a blue house to go home to, and a heart that was brave enough to feel both pride and hurt at once. Close to midnight, I stood alone in the kitchen, the hoods whispering, the metal counters cooling under my palms. The last receipt curled in the register like a sleeping moth. I counted the till $1.062 before tips, and wrote the number in my notebook because numbers steady me when hearts do not. I wrapped the cornbread, slid the lemon curd into the walk-in, and stacked the plates like white moons. The table I had set for my family sat untouched, 12 chairs patient and shining. I told myself they were late, that the world is messy, that love sometimes limps. The lies tasted like cold tea. My phone buzzed on the counter. "Lucas," it said. I answered with a quick, "Where are you?" My brother sounded breathless. Happy in that way people are when the room they're in is full. "We're at Mason's launch party," he said. "He sold the app, didn't you hear? Big time. It's huge, Nora." I stared at the pan of roasted bones, their heat fading. "Tonight?" I asked, as if the clock had lied to me. He laughed at something far from the receiver. "Yeah, the whole family came. Even Aunt Evelyn flew in. You should see it. Champagne everywhere, a DJ, some investor from New York City, buying rounds." Mom cried when Mason thanked everyone. I gripped the phone and felt my mouth go dry. "You were supposed to be here," I said. The word "here" sounded small, like a drop spoon. On the other end, Lucas sighed. "Don't be mad. Your restaurant will be open every night. This is a once-in-a-lifetime thing." I looked at the jar labeled Pie Fund. Alice's $40 and Henry's $50 leaned together like two friends. "Mine was once in a lifetime too," I said, but he didn't answer right away. Music boomed through the line. Someone shouted his name. "We'll come by tomorrow," he said, cheerful, and before I could speak, the call ended with a soft click. The quiet after was a wait. I wiped my hands on my apron and called my mother. No answer. I tried my sister, Maria. "I'm proud of you." Her text appeared a minute later, a dry leaf of a message. I wanted to ask, proud enough to show up? Instead, I slid the phone into my pocket and turned back to the sink. I washed each pan the way I had prepped each plate. Careful, exact. Grease turned to rainbows and then to clear water, and I remembered the framed 20-pound note at home, the way it caught morning light like a small crown. For courage, Naomi had said in Boston, and I thought, courage is finishing the dishes when no one comes. When the last plate was shelved, I walked into the dining room and sat at the family table. I let my hands rest where my parents' plates would have been. I pictured Diane's blue dress and Robert's toast that never left his pocket. I pictured Aunt Evelyn's laugh, Grace's fast talk, my nephew Ben's spoon tapping the glass. I let myself feel the sting, all of it, the clean hurt of being chosen second, the steady ache of being chosen last. The room smelled faintly of lemon and warm sugar, and I wondered if success in America is louder than love, if bright confetti can drown out a quiet promise. I wrote one line on a blank order ticket. I opened the door and stood alone, and I am still standing. Outside, the sign was dark, but the streetlight made a pale path to my car. I locked the restaurant and slid the keys into my pocket, the same way I had that morning, only heavier now. At a red light, I breathed in, breathed out, counted to 20 like a cook timing eggs. At home, my small blue house took me in without a word. I touched the 20-pound frame and said, "Thank you for staying." Then I opened my notebook and wrote a new goal beneath the numbers. Tomorrow, feed whoever arrives. Learn their names. Build the kind of family that pays the check in dollars and in presents. I closed the book, turned off the lamp, and let the night lift me toward a thinner, truer kind of morning. Morning found me in the small blue house, coffee steaming on the table, sunlight holding the frame with Naomi's 20-pound note. I read the line I wrote before sleep. Feed whoever arrives, and felt it settle in me like bread. I packed my notebook, tied my hair, and drove to North Star Kitchen with the windows cracked to the cool air. Portland felt bright and plain-spoken, like a friend who will tell you the truth and then help you carry the box. I unlocked the door at 9 and started stock. Chicken bones into a pot, onions softening, lemons lined like coins. A knock came early. It was Henry from the corner table, wearing a cap with a faint logo. "Brought you coffee," he said. "Strong." He handed me a tall cup and a folded $20. For the pie fund, he added, almost shy. Behind him, two teachers, Laura and Nina, peeked in and asked if they could sit by the window and grade papers. I said yes, of course, and the room began to sound like a place where the day could bloom. By 11, Carol and Mark from Seattle were back, on their way to the train. They split a green salad and left a note. "Your chicken made us call our mothers," with $18 in cash under the plate. A nurse named Zoe brought a tired coworker, Sam, and said, "We need soup and a reason to smile." I ladled bowls, warmed cornbread, and brushed it with honey butter. When the first slice of lemon pie went out, a light ran through the room. The jar on the bar filled, a $10 here, 5 singles there, one crisp $50 from a man named Daniel who said he found a job and wanted to share the luck. At noon, a woman in a green coat hovered by the door. My mother, Diane. She looked smaller without a crowd around her. I wiped my hands and walked over. "Hi, Mom," I said. She looked at the chairs, the mirror, the chalkboard menu. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "I am sorry." She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded letter and 2 $100 bills. "This is clumsy," she said, "but I want to help." I held her eyes for a long breath. "You can help by sitting down," I said, and she did. I brought her chicken and a slice of pie and a glass of water with lemon. She cried once, quick, and then ate, slow and steady, like a person learning a new way to love. Word moved down the block. By 2, every table was full. A carpenter named Miguel, a florist named Beth, a bus driver named Owen, 2 baristas named Lily and June, a librarian named Ruth who paid in exact dollars and left a book about small kitchens in big cities. I wrote names on the order tickets and said them back at the table. "Thank you, Beth. Good to see you, Owen," so each person would feel counted. I worked the line and the floor until my apron was a map of the day. When I paused to total the register, the number surprised me. $1,514 before tips, and the jar held $212. I wrote both down and drew a small star. In the late afternoon, my brother Lucas came in with a coil of lights over his shoulder, as if the promise had been there all along. He looked at me with a face I recognized from when we were 10 and 12, before the world taught us to sort our loves into lists. "I messed up," he said. "Can I hang these?" I nodded. He worked in quiet lines, ran an extension cord, and when he clicked them on, the room shifted from bright to warm as bread. Maria followed, carrying a speaker. "I made a playlist," she said, soft. My father, Robert, came last with an old index card. He tapped the glass with his fork and, without standing, gave the toast that never left his pocket. It was short and true. He said my name twice. Evening softened into night. Neighbors waved from the sidewalk. Inside, the mirror showed a room that belonged to its people. I boxed 2 slices of pie for a woman on her way to the bus. I comped a coffee for a man who had lost his wallet. I watched my mother wrap forks in napkins and my brother fix a wobbly chair with a shim and a laugh. For a moment, I thought of Europe, of that small 20-pound crown of courage, and of America, this wide, stubborn country where a woman can stand in her own doorway and call it home. When I finally turned the sign to closed, the room hummed with clean counters and cooling pans. I locked up and drove back to the blue house. On the porch, I sat and counted blessings like bills. A full jar, a full book of names, a family learning how to show up. Inside, the frame on the mantel caught the lamplight. I touched the glass and said, "We're open." Then I wrote one more line in my notebook. "Build the table you need, and the right people will bring their own chairs."